Well, look, I'm just going to throw in my 2 cents. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Run Gen Z. I really am. Joe has really taken it something that was tiny, getting a few people involved. And again, just looking for where we were last year to where we are this year. The room is bigger. More people are coming up. We got more of these individuals, part of this Gen Z generation or whatever generation is this younger generation. I still think I'm part of your generation, by the way. But I've been told I'm not.
You still wish you were part of that generation.
I know. Don't you feel like that sometimes? You're like, oh, man. Maybe they'll accept me as one of their own. Maybe they don't realize I'm losing all my hair.
No, that's just you.
Yeah, I know, right? But what you've been able to take here and grow it, and now, again, the room is absolutely bursting, and it's so important. And I'll say this. I did a little talk beforehand. The fact that when folks were coming up just to say hi, Oklahoma, Colorado, California, all over the country. We have people here from all over the country here tonight, which is really great. We were in this room last year. I don't think you're going to be able to hold this in this room next year. I'm just telling you, it's growing, which is leaps and bounds. And I talk a lot about it's all. I don't mean to sound cliche. It's all about the children. It's all about the future. Right? You got to think. Good leadership is always thinking 5, 10, 20 years down the road. Where do we want to be? What grounding are we setting today? What opportunities are we setting today to build for the next generation? I mean, look, I get to be a little partisan now because I think everyone knows I've endorsed and I'm 1,000% behind Nikki Haley. I think she's going to be an amazing president, and I really do because it is that next generation of conservative leadership. That is what we are. We're America. Right? We don't go backwards here, guys. We don't live in the past. We want the next 2.0, the next big idea, the next upgrade, whatever you want to call it, right? That next generation of leadership, and that's why I get so excited with Nikki. So tonight we can talk a policy and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to veer a little bit from we can talk a little bit of policy. It's Nikki Haley. We'll talk about whatever Nikki wants to talk about, to be honest. But at the end of the day, I do want to spend some time talking about some other stuff, some more personal stuff, if you will. I think that's what matters. We will talk about the campaign. I'm a big believer that for all the folks out there that want to run, and then I'll get off my soapbox in a second, be yourself. You got if at anything, be yourself, be genuine. I'm not saying don't listen to your consultants and all that sort of thing, as you run for office and all that. There's going to be all that. But at the end of the day, if you're not yourself, you got to look in the mirror and not be yourself forever. You know what I mean? So always be yourself. Don't try to give people the answer that they want to hear. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for someone who's genuine. And by God, that authenticity is something that is so desperately needed, especially in Washington, D.C., which is awesome. So let's get it started. Let's start with the campaign a little bit, though, Nikki, if we can. And then we'll go back and forth a little. But let's start up. I don't mean to be so general, like give us an update on the campaign, but it's crunch time. We're getting down to Iowa. I mean, I think there's voter turnout, I think, is going to hit record levels here in the state, which is exciting. You've been crisscrossing all over the place. Give us an update on the campaign. Is it what you thought it would be at this point, or has it been a completely different ride?
It's really exciting. I mean, we're 10 days until Iowa. A week after that is New Hampshire. A month after that is South Carolina. We've been doing this for 11 months, 16, 17-hour days, every single day. So when you get to this point, you're excited because this is what we've done. We've done, over 150 town halls, shaking every hand, answering every question. I'm the last person to leave. And so to now have it come back to this, it's good. The big surprise is it's cold. These two states are cold. Iowa and New Hampshire, coming from South Carolina. And the fact that they're like, oh, this is kind of mild. No, it's not. It's cold. And so that has been the biggest surprise. Each state has its personality a little bit, which I love. South Carolina is an early state in the presidential primary. I find Iowans to be very patriotic, very hardworking, and very careful. They're very conscious about who they give their support to and what that means. They want to see you a lot. They want to ask you every question. So that's kind of how Iowans have been. But Iowa reminds me a lot of South Carolina because I grew up in rural South Carolina. So whenever I see the farmlands, that's peace to me. That feels like home. So it's a beautiful state. Then you go to New Hampshire, your state. They wear their feelings on their sleeve. They're not careful. They tell you what they think. They want to see you over and over again. They want to ask you those questions. There's nothing off bounds. But they they're much more energetic and vocal about what they want and what they don't want. Then you get to South Carolina. And in South Carolina, we kick with a smile, right? So it's kind of a combination of the two. In South Carolina, it's the same thing. You know, very patriotic, very hardworking. We want to see you over and over again. We want to ask you those questions, but we're polite about it. And we might tell you off and you don't know that just happened. So it's one of those things but they're all good. You know, there's a few nuances. Iowa cares more about, you know, in education, more about school choice, whereas New Hampshire cares more about transparency in education. Like there's tweaks in the policies, which is fun for me to see, like what states individually care about. Obviously, Iowa's agricultural. New Hampshire, they're very big on their veterans. So it's been fun to see the differences. But I can tell you this, running for president, to me, is no different than running for what you're looking at. It's just bigger. Because I'm campaigning exactly the same way as I did when I ran against the longest-serving legislator. Exactly the same way when I was a Tea Party candidate that ran in a 5-way race. It's touching hands. It's listening to people. It's communicating. And it's making sure that you show them what you care about. And so that's what I've tried to do. It is what you make it, and I've tried to make it as much as I possibly can.
Look, it's to be... We were Thursday? No, when we were on the campaign trail.
I mean, I don't know
like
what
yesterday.
day today is,
I know,
so
right?
I can't tell you that.
That was kind of my point. So I was on the campaign trail with you just a couple days ago, and we were just stop after stop after stop, and town hall after town hall. The thing I'm always impressed with is when I get late at night, you can tell I get tired, right? Because I'm all energy in the morning, and sometimes you've got this way of doing it where I think everyone feels like your last town hall feels like your first.
Yeah.
And look, I was on the campaign with you 2 days ago. I flew out to Iowa. I'm exhausted. You look like you just got up. You look like you're ready to go. So, I mean, for some of the new candidates, because you got to put the hours in, right? For these folks that are running for the first time or thinking about running, how do you have that balance?
Well, I think first go back to what made me decide to run in the first place. You know, I had never been politically active. I wasn't in college Republicans. I was never that kid. I was an accountant and had worked in the corporate world, and I came back home to the family business, and I happened to be telling my mom how hard it was to make $1 and how easy it was for government to take it. And my mom said, quit complaining about it, do something about it. So I didn't know any better. I was like, oh, I'll run for the State House. They're the ones that say small businesses need to pay taxes. So I started asking questions. I didn't know how to run for office. I didn't know who to go to or what to say. So everybody I asked, they said, you're too young. You have small children. You can't do it with small children. You really need to start at a lower level. You don't need to be looking at State House. And so every single one closed the door for me. And believe it or not, I was at a women's leadership group at Furman University, and they had different panels, and one of the speakers was Hillary Clinton. Now, I don't know that I have ever agreed with Hillary Clinton on anything, but she made one statement. She said, for every reason they tell you not to run, that's every reason you should. And I walked out of there, and I said, I'm running for the State House. Now, it was after I realized I was running against the longest-serving legislator in South Carolina and realizing he was related to half the district, but then the only option was to win. And I literally knocked on doors. I couldn't get people to show up at an event because no one knew who I was, so I would stand in the entrances of neighborhoods and hand out donuts and coffee. And that was the way I got people to know. And I just outworked everybody else. And I think that's the biggest thing is you really have to put yourself out there. And my best advice to you is 2 things. Push through the fear. When you feel that fear inside, if you push through it, you will find out how strong you are on the other side. If you don't push through it, you never know what could have been. If I didn't push through the fear, I wouldn't have run against the longest-serving legislator in a primary. If I didn't push through the fear, I wouldn't have run for governor against 5 other people. If I didn't push through the fear, I wouldn't have accepted the job as ambassador. If I didn't push through the fear, I wouldn't be running for president. But when you push through the fear, that's when magic happens. The second thing that you need to remember is trust your gut. Your gut will take you through. Keep your faith, and everything will fall into place. Don't worry about what everybody else is saying. Don't worry about anybody else's criticisms. Be yourself. I don't live, eat, and breathe politics all the time. I don't. I like to be normal. And so I like to have fun. I like to joke around. When I'm at home, I'm not watching the news. I'm under a blanket with a glass of bubbles, and I'm watching a movie with my husband. Like, that's what we do. And you have to have that, too. You have to have a normal life and your work life. And that balance will make you better, is if you do.
And I always think that it comes through. If you're not enjoying it, right? If you're passionate, you're going to enjoy it. And if you're enjoying it, that comes through. If you're not enjoying it, boy, people smell it a mile away.
Yeah.
Boy, this person is running, and I don't know if they really want to be running. They look
because they look like they don't like it.
That's right. And the other big thing is, someone was asking me earlier. Well, politics isn't. I just feel like politics is all about big money and advertising. And I think the message, especially here in Iowa, just the opposite. It's being yourself, being genuine, smiling, holding a puppy. I always say this. If you're running for office, for God's sakes, hold a puppy. You have a puppy. You have a dog.
I have
right?
2 dogs.
You have 2 dogs. I know Bentley. You have another dog?
Rio. Rio's the wild one, but Bentley's the proper one.
So, let's talk. All right, let's jump into that. So you have Rio. You have Bentley. They're at home.
Yes.
You are the wife of a deployed veteran right now. He's overseas.
Yeah, that wasn't
right?
planned. To run for president and have your husband be deployed, but God never gives you more than you can
When Michael got
handle.
deployed, I don't know if I've ever asked you, when he got deployed, did you start thinking, because you can't negotiate that when you're deployed. You're deployed.
Yeah.
Did you think, okay, maybe this is the end of the run, maybe I shouldn't be doing this?
Never.
I mean, that just had to be such a curveball, though.
No, and I think Michael, more than anyone, wanted me to continue. I mean, we have a great partnership, and I always tell people there is nothing that will disqualify you from running for office. If you have a passion for it, if you really want to make a difference, if you can communicate why you want to make that difference, it doesn't matter what position it is, you should do it. But the one disqualifier, if your family doesn't support you, you can't do it. I would never do, because you need your family. Your family's got to be rock solid with you. This can't be a half in, half out, because it's too hard. And so, Michael, that was the biggest thing with the deployment, was he didn't want me to not do this. And so that was an automatic that I was going to do it. It was just going to make things a little bit harder.
Yeah.
So
that's great. So I was thinking about running for Senate. I was actually this much thinking about running for president at one point. But it was family. At the end of the day, it was clearly they were kind of willing to go through it, but I could see they weren't in it. And you got to be in it, because if you don't have that foundation, right, you got to have some. As much as you're on the road, you got to know there's that foundation at home. Family,
and that support system that on a good day or a bad day, they're still going to be there.
That's right. So my son's at boot camp right now. He enlisted in the Marines. Kind of a shock to us.
In South Carolina.
In South Carolina, he's in Paris
proud
Island.
of him.
But that was another thing when he said, "Oh, Pop, I'm not going to college. I'm going to enlist in the Marines." And oh, holy cow! So we're trying to figure that all out. But again, you got to have that family ground. So let's talk about this for a second. So if I remember, because we've known each other for a little while. So let me give everyone a little bit. Here's a piece of trivia. I become governor in 2016. I think we shared being governor together for like 2 days. Same with Terry. Terry gets shipped off to become the ambassador. She gets shipped off to become the ambassador. At the same time, my father, I'm dating you, Terry. I'm sorry. I think everyone else has already gone here. My father was governor with you in the 80s, and I was governor with you for a couple of days. So we're all connected here a little bit. But if I remember correctly, Michael's a really good cook on the grill. So I got to dive into this, because I remember we started talking about cooking and all this, and he's the cook. So what do you like to cook, Nikki?
So if Michael didn't cook, we wouldn't eat. That was on it. I have an inability to do anything in the kitchen. It really is something. I'm very intimidated by the kitchen. I'm not good at it. And so when Michael went on his first military training mission back in 2007, and my kids were little, and he was gone for like 3 or 4 months. It's a wonder my kid's skin didn't turn orange from Chef Boyardee. It was that bad. And I remember one time I tried to branch out and do like a hamburger helper or something. And I went and I put it down in front of the kids. And my little one, he started eating it. And I said, it's okay, Nayland. If you don't like it, you don't have to eat it. And he was like, oh, good. And my daughter just elbowed him. And she goes, it's great, Mom. Oh, and I said, y'all can eat cereal. And they ran to the cabinet. They got cereal. I'm just not good at it. But I clean. So he cooks, I clean. That's always kind of been what it's like.
So it's probably best for everyone you're on the road a little bit right now. You get to eat better. They get to eat better.
And there's no one at home because, like, I just have my 2 dogs. So literally, my life consists of working, and then my one day. I have a rule: I have to go home 1 day a week. We take care of my parents, so I need to check in on Mom and Dad, make sure they're okay, and I need to just see the dogs because that makes me happy. So I go home 1 day a week, and I always say it can't be 2 half days. It has to be 1 day, no makeup. That's the rule. But now I think I'm losing that because we've got like a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. It's crazy. So one thing I did want to talk about, because we were obviously all governors, and governors get stuff done. We always talk about that 24/7, on the job, accountability, results, different stuff. I'm fascinated with the United Nations thing because you tell a great story of when you were first asked to be in the United Nations, and I kind of want it, you've done it in your town hall, and I want you to repeat it here because I have the same thought process because the United Nations is this. I'm focused on New Hampshire, the 603, the live free or die state. If anyone asked me to worry about what was happening overseas, I'd be like, holy cow. So take me through a little bit when you get a phone call asking you to be in the UN.
You know, it started with, I was governor. I loved being governor. I think it's a fantastic job. And so I got a call. Reince Priebus called me at our Republican Governors Association meeting and said, President-elect Trump wants to meet with you. And I said, okay, fine. You know, I'm at an RGA meeting. We can schedule it for next week. And he said, no, he wants you to come tomorrow morning. And I said, what's this about? And he said, he wants to talk to you about Secretary of State. I go, Secretary of State? I said, Reince, I'm a governor. And he's like, look, that's what he wants to talk to you about. You need to be here first thing in the morning. So I go the next morning. And I knew President Trump. We had been friends before. He had supported my campaign for governor. And I said, look, I'm not your person. I said, you don't need someone with a learning curve. We've got a lot of issues going on in the world. But I'm happy to help you find someone. I'm happy to do whatever I can. And I go back. Reince calls again and says, don't say anything, just listen. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. I go, Reince, I don't even know what the United Nations does. I just know everybody hates it. And he said, well, the president's good, right? It is so true. He said, well, the president's going to call you tomorrow. I need you to be ready. So we go home. We're looking at it. My husband, Michael's like, Nikki, I think you'd be good at this. And I'm like, I don't know. And we're going through, and I'm like, well, we'll see. So the president calls the next morning. He's like, all right, Nick, are you going to do this? And I said, sir, look, there'd have to be some conditions. And he said, okay, what are they? And I said, well, I've been a governor. I don't want to work for anyone else. I would want to work directly with you. So it needs to be a cabinet position. He said, done. What else? I said, well, I'm a policy girl. So I'd want to be in the room when decisions are made. So I need to be on your National Security Council. He said, done. What else? That's when I was like, oh, we're packing the bags to go to New York. And I said, well, I'm not going to be a wallflower or a talking head. I need to be able to say what I think. And he said, that's exactly why I want you to do this. And he was true to his word from the first day to the last day. We had a great working relationship. And he let me do my job. And when I got to the UN, I purposely didn't study the do's and don'ts of the UN. I wanted to go in with fresh eyes. And so I went in with the mindset that I wanted countries to know what America was for and what America was against. I didn't care if they didn't like me, but I wanted them to respect America. And that's what we did.
No, that and more. That's awesome. And I love, it's a tough line to hear, but it's the right line when you say it. You say it a lot. You say, look, the world's on fire. And it is. I mean, international issues have just escalated at such a level with such a lack of leadership out of Washington and having that expertise. And I said I'm not going to take any digs at Trump. Trump was always the pretty face in the meetings. But when it came to policy and understanding what was really going on and the details of who's who and who the Houthis are and what their interests are and, why our interests in Israel are so important or all the nuances of when you're dealing with, nearly 190 countries around the world. I think whatever that learning curve was, it had to have been exponential, but it's awesome. And that's the background we need.
And, I think what you need to know about foreign policy, and, Governor Branstad was fantastic as ambassador. I mean, he was a great partner to have, especially when China was, and is our number one national security threat. The one thing that I found is what you do as governor really does roll over into international affairs. Because when you're faced with a challenge, the first thing and Henry Kissinger actually taught me this. When I came in and I was asking him, tell me what they're thinking. When I'm having to negotiate things, how should I see this? And he said something that's very similar when we're governor. He said, understand the fears of your opponent. So my job, North Korea was testing ballistic missiles every other weekend. And the only way I could get it done was to get the Security Council to come on board. That's China, that's Russia, that's UK, that's France. It's, all these countries, but China and Russia were going to be my main ones. And so I went and talked to the Security Council, and I said, okay, I'm going to negotiate with China. Are you okay if I handle this? They didn't want to deal with it, so they were like, go. So I'm negotiating with China, who didn't want to do anything against North Korea. But I knew they had two fears. They didn't want war on the peninsula, and they were worried that if Kim Jong-un of North Korea fell, that all the North Koreans would come into China, and they didn't want that. So when I started to push on negotiations, my comment was, this is about preventing war. We all want to prevent war. That's the number one goal. And the second thing was, you need to know, we don't want regime change. That's not our goal. Our goal is not to take out, North Korea's leader and put in another one. We just want the ballistic missile testing to stop. And we passed the largest set of sanctions against North Korea in a generation. Stop the testing of ballistic missiles by me pushing China to understand that we weren't going to do anything that they were scared of, but they had to do what we wanted to do. And that was the way we got it done. And that's how you have to look at foreign policy is you always have to not say what you want to say. What are they hearing? Because when you do it from the avenue of what they're hearing, that's when the negotiations happen.
Look, I focus on the international stuff and the UN stuff because, again, if I had been in your shoes, and you tell that story so great because I don't know anything about the UN. Why are you asking me to be part of the UN? Holy cow. But what you were able to do there, that's not so different from folks out here in this audience going, gee, should I run for the assembly? I don't know anything about the State House. Maybe I shouldn't be doing. Jump in, right? Sometimes if you have a passion, you'll learn it. You jump in. You have the passion for it. Your passion drives the energy to get you where you need to be, and to really excel at it. And without without going too far, I think you were the best foreign policy leader we've had since Henry. And God bless his soul. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was amazing. But we need some of that, right? We need some of that. But it all starts with that courage to say, I'm going to make the first step. I'm going to run. Or I'm on the school board and now I'm going to run for the city council. Or I'm on the city council and now I'm going to run for the state house. Or, you know what, I'm a stay-at-home mom right now, but I'm going to run for the state house and whatever it is. Find your thing, find your passion, and don't overthink it. Just jump. The hardest decision you make, right, is that first step. Sometimes.
And just to give you some stories of what it was like, and then I know you have some, and you should share them with them because I think it's important. When I ran in that first race against that longest-serving legislator, he was related to half the district. Truly, he was related to half the district. And it's not always what you do, it's how you do it. And always keep your end goal in mind. So here I am, literally an unknown person in the district. And I go to a Ducks Unlimited event, which is a big hunters event in South Carolina. Everybody was there. Must have been 1,000 people. And I'm standing there with my Nikki Haley for State House button on. And God bless my husband. He's standing right there with me going, what are we doing here? And the guy that runs it got up on stage and said, I'm supporting Larry Kuhn. I want all of y'all to support Larry Kuhn. And let's send him back to the State House. And everybody cheered. All 1,000 of them. And I was standing not far from Mr. Kuhn because I had stood in line to shake his hand before I started campaigning with anyone. And I went to him and he said, see, they love me, pretty lady. And I said, you know, they do. That did not stop me. I kept on going. Then I go, and there was one of his cousins. He wouldn't see me, and I needed him because he had a whole section of Lexington that we needed to get. I called and called and called. He wouldn't call me back. So I went to the barbecue place. I picked up some barbecue, and I walked in the door. And he looked at me, and I said, I brought you lunch. I want you to eat. I just want you to listen to me while you eat. We got him on board by doing that. The guy that announced that he was supporting Larry Kuhn in front of those 1,000 people, I showed up at his office. And I said, I just want to introduce myself. He said, I know who you are. And I said, I just want to tell you why I'm running. And I talked to him and told him exactly what I was doing. He goes, what is it that you want me to do? I just literally announced to 1,000 people that I was supporting Larry, who was his cousin. And I said, I'm not asking you to put a yard sign out in your yard. I said, but I want you to go tell everybody you know that I showed up and that I talked to you. And before I leave, I want you to write me a $1,000 check. I walked out that door with a $1,000 check.
That's great.
Push through the fear.
Yeah.
Do the things that are uncomfortable to do. None of that was comfortable. Same race. Group of businessmen asked me to come. I think it's great. These are major players in that district. I show up, and they sit me down, and they said, look, we're all friends of Larry, and we think that you're going to do great things. But we think what's in the best interest of the community is, if you step out of the race, we're happy to get you whatever position you want. And I said, that's so nice of you. Thank you. And I said, but you know what? I've raised $25,000. I'm going to double it by next month. But I would appreciate if you go tell Mr. Kuhn that if he'd like me to consider him for any position, I'd be more than happy to look at it. I say that because I was shaking in my boots when I said it, but I didn't let them see it. Do the things that are uncomfortable to do. If you just go around the same people that are comfortable, you won't win. If you go to groups that are not like you, that maybe not even think like you, and you go and show them that you are willing to show up, that's how you win.
It's all about exceeding expectations, right? I always say when you get elected, you have he was elected with 55% of the vote. If the poll numbers drop, there's one reason for that. You're not meeting the expectations of those who had supported you before. Well, we voted for you. You're not meeting my expectations, so we're not with you anymore. So politics is all about meeting or exceeding, and the hardest expectations are your own, right? Because you think you can't do it, and it's a great feeling when you walk out of those rooms and you're like, oh wow, that worked. I pushed through it. There were smiles. We made connection. I grew up. I was number 7 of 8 kids. I was insanely shy. I mean, insanely shy. There's no way I was ever going to do public speaking or anything like that. Politics was the furthest thing from my mind. And the first political speech I gave as governor, when I announced I'm running for governor, the worst speech you can imagine. I tried to memorize the speech. It was all over the place. It was just the 10-minute speech turned into 90 seconds of get me out of here. This was awful. I mean, it was just the worst thing I'd ever done. And I never wrote a speech literally again. I've never written a speech again. I didn't even write my inaugural address. Quasi-regret that at this point, but that's a whole different story. I've learned that you have to do that in front of the assembly. But But you just push through that fear of being shy. You push through the fear of meeting new people. You push through the assumptions. On election day, I was told I was going to lose. I think the University of New Hampshire poll said, that's the other one that can get you down. Polls, right? Yep. Ignore it. It means nothing, especially in this day and age. Even good pollsters barely know how to poll. I was told on election day, you're going to lose by 11%. Like it wasn't even going to be close. Sununu's going to get wiped out. And I won by 2%. Or did I? No, I really did. I really did. I won. I swear to God. So, but no, and so again, it's like, but you see those poll numbers sometimes. You're like, oh, you're like, I thought we had momentum. The poll numbers don't mean you don't have momentum. It doesn't mean if you're connecting on the ground. Oh, the other guy has raised more money. Who cares? Wait till you watch how bad his ads are, right? I mean, how you spend the money is totally different, right? And some candidates will raise money and they'll do big ads across, and it'll seem like they're saturating the market. But you know what they're not doing? They're not talking to folks. They're not listening to folks. They're not letting folks tell their stories. And the word I go back to a lot in New Hampshire is story. The power of your story, but more importantly, the power of letting somebody else tell their story to you and make that connection. That's what they want. So where they weren't with you before, they say, wow, I got to tell my story. They listened. It was an open ear. At least, my God, somebody at least, gave me some time and understood what I was talking about with a mental health issue, a opioid crisis issue, a school issue, your kids, whatever it was. And so again, anything is possible. Sometimes you got to run multiple times.
Right? And something to add on that is, and to me, it's the hardest part is everybody talks about politics being about money and about corporate stuff and about lobbyists and all of those things, and those are all there. But when you serve, the best part about serving is when you help that person no one knows. When you go and you do something and you know that you just made their life easier and they deserve that. That's really why you run. You're running to help people. You're running to lift people up. It's not what the media wants to say that it's about this money or that. It's actually, if you genuinely are running, the best part of the job is never the title. That's a headache. The best part of the job is when you help someone who never would have had the help anyway. When you used what you have to go help someone's life be a little bit easier or get them information they didn't know or show them how to do something. That truly is what service is supposed to be. Those are the stories I remember. It's never about the lobbyist. It's never about what company it was. It's about the person you helped that day. It's about the difference you made. Because at the end of the day, if you're not running to really make a difference in other people's lives, don't do it. There's no other reason to do it. It's a hard life. Really. I mean, I always say you got to be crazy to do this. Because it's being in politics, it's a blood sport. There's nothing nice about it. But we do it because you can move the ball. You can make people's lives better. That is the craziness, is we actually do it for something bigger than that no one will ever know. But when you do it, it's addictive because you're like, we have to help more people. We have to do more things. And then you just get all caught up in it.
Holy crap, to have that mindset in the White House. That would be awesome. Let's give a big round of applause.
Oh, thank you
to Nikki.
so much.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely awesome.